You're listening to Drinks and a Movie with your host, Rudy. Spoiler alert.
All right, Drinks and a Movie podcast. Everybody, thanks for tuning in and checking out the video here. This is a super special ultimate episode where I've got every Danny and Daniel known to man here with us. This is going to be kind of a turn the tables type episode where I actually have Daniel Vasquez, who's going to be asking all of us some questions. We're going to be talking about American Me and all kinds of stuff we'll be talking about the podcast. So, Daniel, I'm actually going to turn it over to you and let you take it from here.
Thank you. Thank you, Rudy. It's an honor to turn the tables for a moment on your esteemed show. So I'll do my best to do honor by you. So the room is filled with Dannies, and most of them are legends. And you'll see quickly who's not. So I'll start with the not legend. Myself. My name is Daniel Vasquez. I am born and bred in Northern California. I live in Los Angeles today. I'm a 35, 40-year vet of journalism. I've worked for the Oakland Tribune, Boston Globe, South Florida Sun Sentinel, and others. I'm a Pulitzer Prize finalist. And a funny side note, I met one of the folks here, Daniel Villarreal, through journalism. And so, anyways, that's why I'm here. I made a living of asking questions. And today I work with the Op-Ed Project, which helps folks who have been marginalized get published in major publications. And I also am the managing editor for a new upstart news site in LA called Galo News. And so, I'm here a little bit on their behalf. But all of that ties into my career has been able to lead me to talk to some very important people. And today, those people are Latinos. And I'm just tickled, again, to be in this room because I'm no joke. These folks are legends. Everyone in this room is legends, even one of us who's not named Danny. So I'd like to just mention quickly and then jump into the questions, who's in the room. Starting with Danny Otto. And he's got quite a list of credits. He is an actor, he's a director, he's a producer. He played Otto in American Me, obviously a classic in Hollywood, but particularly among Latinos. We also have in the room Danny De La Paz, who is an actor, he's an activist, he's a legend, he's a producer, and he's also, I'm told, a diva. But he pulls it off because he's got the looks. We also have in the room Daniel Villarreal.
The incredible, please. The incredible Daniel. Yeah. Thank you.
Daniel is here today on behalf of 3 different tequila companies. But Daniel is actually an actor as well. He's a legend as well. He's a photographer. He's a poet. He's a comma. He keeps going. And then we're turning the turntables. We're turning the mic on Rudy. I want to call him Danny Ruiz. Rudy Ruiz, who is, he's since 2018, he's been hosting this incredible show, Drinks and a Movie. And so, I'm really excited to find out how you launched that, what's been the impact, what led you here to today's show and what else you're going to be doing with the show going forward.
We renamed him Rudy Daniels.
Yeah, he's Rudy Daniel.
He's the 5th Daniel.
Yeah, we're going to call him Rudy Daniels today.
That's a stage name.
Yeah.
That's going to win an Oscar. All right. Well, let's start. Welcome, everybody. And again, I'm humbled to be here. Let's start off with Danny Otto. I'd love to hear I want to ask you about American Me, right? I want to ask you about the character. I'd like to ask you, what the film meant to you, what you think it means to the community and about your character. But before that, how did you get into, how did you land there? How did you get in Hollywood? And how have you been able to sustain a career since then? I'd like to start there if that's okay with you.
Well, Daniel, I was going to say, I heard you say Boston Globe. So I went to college in Boston University. So
BU.
Yeah, BU. And then I went on to law school in Washington, D.C. So I was practicing in Tucson, Arizona as a public defender. And particularly always been interested in criminal defense, civil rights especially. But working on the border town there or close to it, began to see some of the atrocities that our community faced, from which unfortunately we still go through: police brutality, immigration issues, which continue to remain, right, as issues for our community, our people. And then there was an incredible movie that I saw on PBS called The Ballad of Gregorio Cortez, which Edward James Olmos was, and I thought this would be an incredible film to get into our community. I had no idea how to reach Eddie. I just thought he was this actor, and I made a bunch of phone calls. One phone call led to another, for about 10 different leads, and finally I left a phone number at some location, and then Eddie almost called me a few days later. Thought it was going to be his executive calling or somebody, but he said, "No, I'm here," and he was at that point trying to take the film in hand, The Ballad of Gregorio Cortez, around the country. So yeah, he would come to Tucson. He was excited, and so were we. Because we never really at that point had too many of our stars come out, do live appearances, so to speak. So he came, brought his film cans, and we had a screening in Tucson, and we had over 2,000 people jammed into Tucson High looking at this film that, unfortunately, I had no knowledge of what projectors or 35 millimeter prints were. So he, when we were set to show the movie, he says, "Are the projectors ready?" And I said, "Projectors?" I said, "There's a projector ready." He says, "Nah, man, you need two." So we drove up to Phoenix, and the whole theater was full. It was not even a theater; it was an old auditorium high school. And he, for 2 hours, we sent a crew to go get the two projectors, 35 millimeter projectors. And for 2 hours, he amazed and mesmerized an audience that stayed captive. Wow. That was the first time I ever saw that. How does somebody hold an audience for 2 hours,
Waiting.
And then, so finally, when the projectors came, and we had trouble with the speaker, so we lowered one little speaker down in the middle of the audience, and that was our speaker. So visually it was okay, but audio, which is just as critical, important in movies, that was lacking. So, but everybody was happy. We had a huge dance in the community afterwards. We raised money for him because he was hurting for money at the time. We needed money for our civil rights projects that we were working on. So, it turned out well. He was pleased, and so were we. And he asked me if I would consider coming back and working with them. And I'd made a commitment to, practice law and build a civil rights center with a number of quality people dealing with those issues. And I thought, the visual image is one of the strongest mediums in the world. And I thought working in that field, trying to tell our stories, trying to get those kinds of issues, addressed in film, theater, television, that was something that would be an honorable thing to do, So I put aside my own, plans in terms of trying to do the law center, practice law, and I came back. I came back to Los Angeles, and I remember the very first thing we did is we went up to screen The Ballad of Gregorio Cortez for Cesar Chavez up in his neighborhood. And they had a theater rented, and it was a 2,000 old seat theater up in where I forget the community they came from. I think they were up in
Delano?
Delano, yes, of course. How can I forget? So a movie theater in Delano was filled with 2,000 campesinos, families, people, and they were cheering at the end. And Chavez stood up in the middle and he says, "I'm calling this La Misión Espiritual," the spiritual mission. Mm-hmm. So ever since that point, we've always referred to the work that we've done collectively as La Misión, you know. So from that point, I wanted to participate. I thought, okay, I worked with Eddie's schedule, did a lot of his legal stuff, but got him into communities across the country. But I thought I'd like to participate in a way as an artist to learn how to do that. Everybody wants to be an actor, I guess, and they figure they can do stuff. But I realized how hard it was, and I started the journey of taking classes and doing community theater and blah blah blah. So I had gotten into some television programs that aren't even remembered now, series, episodes. And then the big thing was American Me for Me. That was the biggest break. But I had to audition for that. Because there were so many actors that, obviously wanted to be a part of that. And I had to rent a costume, and I worked with a casting director who was our casting director. It turned out Bob Moronis. And we worked, and we made the scene. We crafted the scene that I was going to audition for. So, Eddie said, pretty good, and it wasn't until we actually went up to Sacramento, because our first shooting was up in the prison there, Folsom, and he finally said, you know what, I think you could do this role, so I'm gonna say yes. So that was a blessing. I mean, it gets to the thing that all of us at one point or the other in this business have been helped. Even Eddie Olmos or any actor will tell you that everybody's always helped. Somebody's extended a hand, given an opportunity. Nobody really makes it on their own. There's always somebody that can help, and I think all of us, as friends and as colleagues, understand that that's our responsibility as artists. In the films that we do, and you hear some incredible stories from Danny, both Dannys and Daniel, and our fifth Daniel here. But it's important. I think all of us are actors, but we're also activists. And the films we do and the stories we tell just don't stay on the screen. They become an educational component. And then again, a guy like Eddie almost believed in that, so it was pretty easy to fall into that kind of mix to say, okay, next film we're going to do a look in gang history, gang life, and how it affects our community, American Me. We did some documentaries on teen dating violence called It Ain't Love. Different things that have meaning, but that's just don't stay as entertainment, but stay as social examples, changes for societal problems that we have, and within our communities, we suffer from a lot of those same things that we're talking about, domestic violence, gang issues. So to me, being involved in the arts is critically important in terms of being able to affect change, start discussion, and activate a response and hopefully a change for the good. So that's
amazing, and that story is amazing. I didn't know any of that story, and thanks for filling that in. And I do it when I want to introduce the other folks, but I do want to get back to you on American Me. And I had a little joke, and you answered it. I was going to say Boulevard Nights came out in '79, Stand and Deliver '88, American Me in '92. I thought that was going to be an onslaught of more. And, it trickled down. My joke was this: Boulevard Nights, Stand and Deliver, American Me. Was there anything before that? And was there anything after that? And, Gregorio. Yeah, that's an important film. The other thing is Cesar Chavez. It's amazing. You've said, I think what you shared with us is that your dream has remained intact. You want to make a difference for Latinos. And you were doing it through law, education, and then you recognize the power of imagery and Hollywood, and now you've made an impact there. My mom grew up with Cesar Chavez. They were childhood friends, and I covered his funeral. I just happenstance. She passed away before he did, but I covered his funeral in Delano. And so we're not just talking about films, right, or popcorn. We're talking about making differences in folks' lives, and particularly in Latinos. So that's why I really am humbled to be in the room. Danny, that background is amazing. So I'm gonna come back to you. Let's talk about Danny De La Paz. How did you? So that's American Me, and you got there, and you guys would meet in that film, and in American. So Boulevard Nights, first of all, came out in '79, and I'd love to ask Danny how you ended up there, what that experience has been like. But I'll tell you, I saw that film in Portersville when I was about to start high school, and it changed my life. It was like, holy Portersville, in the middle of nowhere,
Northern California.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I spent a summer there with one of my cousins, and that's where I got into being a cholo. I used to wear Star Wars t-shirts and corduroys, and I was riding a lowrider bike and
Wow.
the shirt and the khakis by the time I left. And in the middle of that summer, Boulevard Nights came out, and we went to the theater. And so we walked around the streets in those kind of clothes, and everyone looked down upon us, and the whole thing. I walk into a movie theater, and there you were, and the rest on this giant screen. It was a mind-blowing event for me culturally. And again, I was naive. I thought that was the beginning of, oh my gosh, they're starting to tell our stories, and there's going to be a lot more to come. What's happened. So Danny, how did you end up there, and how did it all begin for you, and what was Boulevard Nights like?
It all began for me in high school, being involved in theater and in the drama department in my school, and they were very active. We had a lot of funds back in those days in the early 70s. They were very, very well funded. So we had costumes and makeup and sets, and we would do these big productions, and we do several of them a year. They were expensive to put on. And that's where it started. I fell in love with acting. I fell in love with being in front of an audience. I fell in love with the process of creating a character. I fell in love with writing. You'd read these scripts. We would do plays that were very beautifully written by these amazing actors. Arthur Miller and William Saroyan, Shakespeare. I mean, all these Chekhov. It was just incredible being exposed to that caliber of craftsmanship in terms of the writing. Anyway, I fell in love with acting and pretty much decided before I graduated that, you could be a professional actor. I knew that was a possibility, and I didn't know how to go about it, but I thought, well, I'm going to go for it. And by my senior year, before I graduated, I had my first professional job in a musical review at Knott's Berry Farm, but it was money, it paid money. And it was a situation where in the spring of my senior year, I had to leave school. In order to graduate, I had to go to night school because in the daytime I had to go to work and rehearse. So I was already baptized in professionalism in my senior year of high school. And then, one thing led to another, and eventually I got an agent very soon after graduating and started going up for television and film roles. And the very first thing I went up for, I got, so right away the agent was like, okay, I can make some money from this kid, And at that time, there was a lot of young people coming into the business, people of color. All these shows were on, All in the Family and the Jeffersons. And there was a lot of youth presented in these programs. And so that's how I entered into it. A couple of years into that, then there was the opportunity to go up for this role in a movie. At the time, it was called King Cobra. And this was what became Boulevard Nights. And I wanted, to be like my idol, James Dean. I wanted to have a career. I wanted to play a variety of different roles. I wanted to try different things, not get locked into one thing. I didn't grow up with gangs. I grew up in Whittier in the 60s. I always tell people my life was just like Kevin in... what's it called?
Wonder Years.
The Wonder Years. That was my life. That show put me in there. That's how I grew up, just like Kevin. I knew where my culture was. My mother and father were both, they both came from El Paso, Texas. My father was born in Chihuahua, Mexico. And I was very aware of, they spoke Spanish in the house, even though they didn't make me speak Spanish, because I think they wanted me to excel in English so I would do well in school. But,
Tell me about your first job.
My first job?
With your dad.
Oh, with my dad. My dad was a carpenter, so I used to go out with him when I was young, 8, 9 years old, and help him on the weekends when he would do side jobs in people's homes. And sometimes we'd be like where we are now in Pasadena, where these very expensive neighborhoods. And I'd never seen anything like that before, but we only could come in on the side entrance because that's where the help went in and out, right? And, we lived in a, lower middle class in Whittier, but I didn't know anything about gangs or any of that stuff. We didn't have that when I grew up. So reading the script of Boulevard Nights was an eye-opener for me. I didn't know what the words meant. Ese vato firme. I had no idea what I thought. Firme was a typo for foreman, like the foreman on a job. I can remember these thoughts I had in my head, but I was fascinated by the inner life of that character of Chuco. He was so isolated and so wanting to be accepted and to be loved and to be somebody. And, at the time I was, 19, 20, 21, whatever, and I was young and I kind of had I was in that same mindset. So I was attracted to that part from the very beginning.
Let me say that it was a blessing that Danny came upon this part, because anybody else would have played the obvious. They would have gone for the cholo. He was looking for the human being, and that's why people still connect with that movie, especially little kids. Little kids love that movie.
I couldn't latch on to the cholo because I didn't know what the cholo was. I had to go for the human that was under the
Yeah.
skin, the heart of the person. The Cholo thing came from the real gang members that they hired
Yeah.
to be in the VGV gang with me. And these guys were very intimidating to me when I first met them, but they fell in love with my talent. They fell in love with my skills, and they gave me so much love and respect. And I got to get over my prejudice against gang members that I admit I had at the time because of them. Mm-hmm. Because, yeah, they were tough, but they were also beautiful
They were
people.
also human beings.
Yeah, they were human beings. And when you got to know them, man, we just got along so well.
And they're the most loyal guys.
They were
once you get past that
they were
point.
loving and loyal, and they opened their hearts, they opened their lives to me, and taught me what it felt like to be them, as well as how to walk and talk and all that sort of thing too, how you dress and their attention to detail or whatever.
I have chills listening to you. First of all, the fact that you didn't have any of that background and you pulled off that performance.
I'll never forget the look on these guys' faces, okay? The real gang members, when they were first introduced to me, I had an afro. The look on their faces was, you could see the jaw kind of slightly open up and the flies going in. And I felt, oh my God, they're disappointed. I just felt this need to want to prove to them that, just trust me, it's going to work out if you can just embrace me somehow.
So first thing that happens, they take them to the barber and get rid of that afro quick.
They took me to their barber I'll never forget on East LA, East LA on Whittier Boulevard, and
give them a number two haircut.
Yeah. But they were amazing, and I'm still friends with one of them to this day.
Yeah, I love what you said about a number of things, the humanity, and you want to, and Daniel I'm gonna introduce Daniel right now. But he mentioned how you brought the humanity to it. One of my first jobs with the Oakland Tribune, and I walked in saying I wanted to cover street gangs, and they couldn't figure out why, and I said I wanted to be the first street gang beat reporter in America, and etc. After a year of 6 months of talking smack, they had me do it. And I spent 9 weeks with Latino gangs in East Oakland. Wow. And at the end of it, what was so scary is I had told them, we gained trust, right? They told me their real life stories. And they allowed me to have their photographs taken. And I told them, so when we did that, towards the end, I said, hey, listen, I said this to you in the beginning, I said it to you in the end, but now we're about to publish. You don't have to do this, right? You don't have to give me permission to use your names. This doesn't affect you. You're criminals. And they said, listen, man, you've told us you're going to tell our story, and so we trust you. And so they blessed it, and we went ahead. But here's the thing: I put my pad down, and I said, okay, thank you, I appreciate that. That's all handled now. I got to say something to you. This whole experience, you've all treated me with such respect. And I think it's because I'm a writer, like you've never met a writer, and you see my name in the paper and you think I'm a little bit of a celebrity. I'm not, but for you, and I got to say this. So if you think that's true, if you think I'm a talented person and you're respecting me, I have to say to you, a gang member is incredible. You're an entrepreneur. You have to work. You can't take weekends off. You have your competition wants to shoot you. You have to be an accountant. You can't. There's no dollars missing. You have to manage others, right? You have to recruit. It's amazing. But you didn't get an education, so you're not going to work for Costco or for Apple. You're working for East 13th or East 18th or East 19th Street. Anyways, what they would think, and they go, "Oh my God, I never thought of it that way, right?" And so when you bring in this humanity and you show Latinos to be real, bloods and bone, it's amazing. So I want to ask you, how did you? Because American Me is what ties all of you together. One of the things that ties you together, not the only thing. How did you get from Boulevard Nights to American Me? And then after you tell me that, I'm gonna segue into Stand and Deliver before we really get into the American Me story, because I want to get to Stand and Deliver. So how did you get from Boulevard Nights to American Me?
Okay, let me start that one off, because we're on the set of Boulevard Nights, okay? We're on the boulevard shooting the cruising scenes. I'm in the car with Shady, Martha Dubois, rest in peace, and with Richard Iniguez, who's still with us today. And we're in between shots. They're lighting, and we're all in the car. So we're in that Riviera together, and we start talking. And the subject becomes, what are we going to do after Boulevard Nights? What projects are out there right now, in the ether? What do we know about for the future? And of course, what comes up? American Me. And I was like, American Me. Richard started telling me about it, Mexican Mafia, and about this characters of the brothers. And I'm thinking, Little Puppet. Yeah, I'm 21. That's probably something I could do, Yeah, right. 13 years later, we finally got around to making the film. I'm at a party one time, and Edward James Olmos is there, and he says to me, "Hey, give me your number. I got to call you up because we're going to do American Me." American Me. I almost passed out. I couldn't believe it. After 13 years, I'd almost forgotten all about it. So that's how I got from Boulevard Nights to American Me. It just took Edward James almost so many years to get into a position where he had the mojo in terms of the industry to get someone like Universal Studios to greenlight that kind of a budget for that kind of a movie. And believe me when I say, maybe it wasn't a big budget compared to today's films, but it was big enough to where we all were very well taken care of.
Mm-hmm. And so if you can think about that for a moment, Danny De La Paz could have played Little Puppet. That would have been a trip.
Yep.
And a little side note to that, Al Pacino had the script for many years.
Yes.
And he was looking at doing that film. So that was, I'm glad he didn't.
I read that in Variety. I read that in Variety one day about
Yeah.
Pacino's involvement. I was like, oh, brother.
Yeah. Now, later on, he also had a project he wanted to do, the general from what was his name? The Pop-Mart
The
general,
Panamanian
dictator.
Noriega.
Yeah. Well, you see, I guess he chose the drug kingpin in Scarface. So he got one of the Latino characters.
The Cuban.
He got to the Cuban, yeah. But he was also interested. It was interesting that Al Pacino would have an interest in
Let me
that.
ask you, Rudy Daniel, are you okay over there?
I'm good. I just enjoy listening.
All right.
So you got to go to Daniel for this one because this is where.
All right. Which me, Daniel?
Yeah.
Let's put the camera on. We have the camera on, Daniel? Okay. So here's the thing. What chills me is that Danny and Danny willed their ways into these films. They wanted to be in them or be a part of it or be with Edward before they even knew him. And then, overnight it happens, 13 years, that kind of stuff. That's crazy. And then, before American Me is in 88, Stand and Deliver. For me, this is silly. Stand and Deliver was my Stand By Me film. I was a kid. I saw Stand By Me by myself. One of the first films I saw by myself, watched it, and it ended. I'm like, oh my God, I want to be in filmmaking. I ended up in journalism. But filmmaking, I thought, oh my God, I can do that. I want to do that. Fast forward, Stand and Deliver, you see that and it's like, holy, that's it. That's the thing, man. But this is for Latinos, not just for Latinos. It's you guys know, it's a film for everybody. Anyways, so Daniel, how did you get into Stand and Deliver, and then how did you get to American Me?
Well, to make a long story short, I hope, I started out as a photographer, and then little by little, I ended up in front of the camera, as a performer. And because of that, I had met so many people. I ended up in the same room with Ramon Menendez, who eventually would direct Stand and Deliver. And Ramon was saying that he was going to have a script about East LA, and we were like, yeah, whatever, But finally, he came around like in '86 with a script called Walking on Water, and that was the story of Jaime Escalante. So after I read the script, I was like, wow, man, like we got to make this happen, And I got everyone that I knew involved in this project. I wanted, whatever we could do to make it happen, we were going to do it. And so when they finally got the money from American Playhouse, the PBS, that was the only place where we could find money, and there was only like $500,000.
Yeah.
I think we raised
Not a big budget.
We raised the money elsewhere.
Yeah.
And they hired me as a production assistant, and so I was working way from the beginning. I was working on the movie, and somehow I ended up in it, because I guess it was just meant to be in a way.
You're a production assistant, and then you end up an actor.
Yeah, and like Ramon didn't really want me in the movie as an actor, but Eddie did, and there was kind of like a little bit of maneuvering there going.
But that speaks very strongly to Edward James Olmos's very strong sense of intuition. He always has a feeling about, especially actors.
Right, but in this case, he wasn't the director. So.
Right. but he still was on your corner. He was in your corner.
The main actor in the film.
The director didn't want you, but he did.
Yeah. No, but it's not that the Ramon didn't want me. He didn't see me.
He didn't see you as a
in that
yeah.
part.
That's
And
what
I
meant.
understand because he saw that character as a tough guy, and I was coming at it like Danny was when he did Boulevard Nights. He was like, no, this is a kid that doesn't need to be like a big guy to do what he does. He had other kind of strengths. So I managed to pull that off. I did it in a different kind of way. And even now, like when Danny and I when we watched what we've done, I can totally see all the mistakes. Like I didn't really know what I was doing, but that character has a certain kind of intensity to it.
Yeah.
That it's like that's why he's powerful. He's a really intense kid.
You could tell he was like deep fried into the gang culture. That was a very intense character.
Churros of the Cholo.
Yeah, he was the churro of the cholos. Absolutely.
It's like Danny says, the real heroes know who they are. You don't have to be tough to be tough.
Yeah.
You grow up there. The neighborhood inherits you.
Yeah.
So because of that was kind of like the connection that Eddie and I had between Stand and Deliver and American Me, and Danny Otto knows that side of it. That when you hook up with Eddie, that you sort of become part of this family. We were all part of this family, and so when Eddie says we're gonna do American Me, we're gonna do American Me. There's no way around it. So you just kind of have to prepare yourself and then be ready to do it.
So that's going to be a great segue, I think, into Rudy. Finally, we're going to get to Rudy because I want to talk about American Me. And I think at this point I should hand it over to the pro here, and he can, But I would like to ask a couple of questions about American Me before I hand it over. And I want to say this about back to Stand and Deliver. You say you start off as a production assistant, and you willed yourself into becoming a key character. But in that process, am I correct? Lou Diamond Phillips again had no gang culture history, and you were teaching him things that ended up in the movie, correct?
Yeah, that was one of my jobs because I have many jobs. One of them was to help Lou, and not just to help Lou, but to help the guy that had originally been cast as the Fingerman, as my character. And so I spent time with him also, and then it got to a point where he couldn't really do the part, so I took over his part, and then he played Eddie's oldest son. But yeah, I worked with Lou for a while because he was kind of like Danny, like he didn't come from that at all. He came from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Austin, I don't know.
Dallas,
Yeah,
Dallas, I think.
and he had long hair, and he wanted to keep his long hair because he was gonna do Young Guns after that.
Oh no.
Yeah, and so he didn't want to cut his hair.
Oh.
So I was like, yeah, that's fine. You don't have to cut your hair. I'll talk to Ramon, and so convinced Ramon that it would be okay. But Lou did a great job.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and you dressed him too, right?
Yeah, well, Danny always compliments how Lou looks in that movie. The what makes these movies what they are, Stand and Deliver, American Me, is that I don't want to say attention, is the love for the detail.
Mm-hmm.
Every little detail has to be true, and so Lou had to dress a certain kind of way in order for that character to work. He had to look good.
There's so many things. And then one of the last things I remember, you found one of the bombs, one of the cars in the, you were driving through the neighborhood and you saw the car and you're like, that has to be in the scene.
Yeah, I was on I was on my way to the studio and I got off the freeway on the wrong exit. And as I got off the exit, I saw the car that I drive in the movie. So I pulled over and I said, whose car is this? And he goes, oh, the guy lives right there. I went and knocked on the door and said, I'm going to put your car in the movie. He goes, well, okay. So that was it. That's how I ended up driving that car.
It's amazing. I mean, wait, it's just amazing. Okay, all right,
like the guy didn't have a choice, I'm driving your car. That's it.
I'm gonna get to Rudy, but right in front of us is this amazing merch here that I'm hoping I can cop one, but I'm not in the studio. So look at this. It's Puppet and Puppet, and so we're gonna get into American Me, and that's why I want to hand it over to Rudy. But what I want to say about American Me, a couple of things. One is it's a seminal film. Period. It's a seminal film in my particular life because my father passed away at 95 this past Christmas. So he lived a long life. And my mom passed away in 94, and she was the center of my world. I never would have left San Jose or Boston and went to Boston if she were alive. I did something I would have. Anyways, the last film, it was only a few films my father, mother, and I went to. And the last one was American Me. And when you say it wasn't a big budget, I remember at the time thinking, holy shit, like, does it get bigger than this? And so I saw that film with my parents, and I never forgot that. Wow. And anyways, that's a small story to how much American Me has changed. And you mentioned, Edward James Olmos and how he finally had he'd risen to the position where he could pull it off authentically, correctly, have the right people in. So I want to ask you how you get there. But this merch right here, I want to before I hand it over to Rudy, I want to ask Rudy a couple of questions too before he launches into American Me. If that's okay with him. This merch here. So Danny De La Paz plays Big Puppet. It could have been Little Puppet, but he plays Big Puppet. And then Daniel Villarreal plays Little Puppet. And here's this. I love this merch. It's denoting this amazing scene where Puppet kills Puppet. Puppet kills Little Puppet. That scene is phenomenal. It's right out of The Godfather. The way you guys pulled it off, the authenticity, the cruelty. We're in love with Little Puppet by the time you take them. You couldn't be more fearful than someone after Big Puppet after you see that, So there's so much to that. But what's so neat to me when I look at this merch is that I happen to know because I'm not just a journalist. I am a fanboy here. I know you guys, Danny De La Paz, and I think all three of you, but I know Danny and Daniel travel a lot together. And you go to shows and you sign autographs, people standing in the sun and they bring their kids to you and you guys have these wonderful conversations and your engagement with the community is so strong. And this right here, your two best friends in this amazing film, you've turned it into, so much. And then here's this merch where you're right next to each other. It's just like everything fit in place. So before I get to Rudy, can you tell me about this scene and about your friendship and this merch?
That scene would never have worked if it wasn't for the fact that the audience truly believed that the brothers, especially Big Puppet, loved his little brother. That was my job. I had to convince them before that scene came around that I truly loved and cared for my brother. Otherwise, taking him out like that would never have had the same effect on the audience that it ended up having. It was just an amazing scene. I know Daniel will never forget it. I didn't want to do it on that day. When the day came, it was overcast, it was cloudy. It was the last day of my shooting schedule. And it was in Simi Valley. There was no sun. And, I went into the makeup trailer that morning and, people in the makeup trailer, they're playing their music, their loud pop music, and like, turn that shit off. I was in such a foul mood. And I remember begging Eddie, please, can we do this another day? I'm really not feeling it today. I was under so much pressure. I just felt like to do that scene, and I wasn't looking forward to it. And Eddie just told me flat out, look, there's a lot of money riding on this thing, and we have to do this now. And even Daniel came to my dressing trailer and knocked on the door, and I almost didn't want to come out. I just didn't want to do it. But, we had to do it. It's your job. You're getting paid. You got to do it. There's a lot of money riding on it. There's a lot of people they're also there to make sure that this happens. And so there you are. And we did what we did. And then sadly, the camera motor, it was an Aeroflex camera. And it's one of these things that the cinematographer wears on his shoulder to give it that kind of gritty, in your face kind of look. And the motor was very loud and it was ticking like in the background. So they had to take the actual dialogue that was recorded on the set and scrap it. And later in post-production, we had to come back in and we had to what they call loop or
ADR.
replace the dialogue with stuff in the studio. Can you imagine? When I heard the original dialogue, it was so powerful, so moving. I thought, oh my God, how am I going to recreate that in this little room, in this little box, in front of this screen and with this microphone? Well, we had to do it anyway, and we did it. But you know what I didn't realize it didn't really matter because the audience they never heard the original dialogue, and they were satisfied with what they got. They were so engrossed in the visual and in being so amazed that could this guy really do that to his own flesh and blood? But as I've always said to people over the years, puppet and little puppet are symbols. They represent every Chicano and every barrio all over the country who kill each other. You're just killing your own brother. You're committing genocide. Whether you're related to him by blood or not, that is
Brother
your brother.
killing brother.
Brother killing brother. Cain and Abel. That's really all it is.
You know, just a little side note, Daniel, in life, because all these characters were based on real people. I'm sure you know that. And they had two brothers, and the same situation, they ordered him to kill. And the brother couldn't do that. So they killed both of them. But Eddie thought, you know what? I want this to go through this way. I want the brother to kill the brother because I want to show our communities and our young people that gang is thicker than blood. That your allegiance to the gang is thicker than the blood. So he turned that around. But in real life, the brother couldn't do it, you know.
And they took them both out.
They took them both out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting point. Yeah.
But can I say a little something more about, because you mentioned about the merch, right? For years and years, okay, I've been doing the merch thing for about 20 years. And for years, people, the fans, right? They would hound me. They wanted a photo of me and my brother, of me killing my brother. And I'm like, why do these people want this? I did not want to do it for years. I didn't do it for years. I held off. I would not do it. I finally got so tired of the requests for an autographed picture from that scene that I said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to release this into the universe. And I'm not trying to promote brothers killing brothers. I don't want people to have the impression that that's what I was doing. That's why the bobblehead is done with a sense of humor. It's really, the two characters are taken from two different scenes. His character comes from the scene where he's waiting for me to come out of prison because he's come to pick me up. And mine is from the scene where I'm going to kill him. So he's all smiles and he's looking forward. He's not looking at his brother standing behind him and is not aware of the rope that his brother's holding. So there's a little bit of humor I put into it, because what the audience did was they brought a lot of humor to it. When mothers look at their kids misbehaving and they look at them and say, "Don't look at me, little puppet," that's funny. They're finding a way to lighten it, to make it palatable or digestible for them as a culture. And they've adopted it.
Not only that, they changed the line.
Well, yeah, I never say little puppet, but he never says play it again, Sam, in Casablanca either. He just says play it or whatever. But you have to put the name in so that people know what you're referencing.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to hear that backstory and also to hear your perspective.
But I think this is a great time to transition over to Rudy, because you have to hear from somebody who's not in the movie how that scene impacted them.
Rudy Daniel.
Why is it that scene became so popular and that "Don't Look at Me, Little Puppet" became so iconic? Just after maybe 2 weeks after the movie had premiered, I started hearing people say that line, and I was bewildered. I was like, why are they repeating that? I couldn't understand what it was about that line that captured their attention so much. Maybe Rudy can speak to that.
Yeah, so you're right. Let's go to Rudy, but I want to say that everything you said about that merch right there, that statue, I know holds true, but from on the other side of the table, not only does the bobbleheads represent the film and the characters and the scene, but it represents Latinos in Hollywood. It represents success and achievement.
We have every right to take our place, just like all the other classic iconic movies have. There's bobbleheads for everything from Bogey and Casablanca to James Dean and Rebel Without a Cause. So why aren't we represented? That's how I see my role as an ambassador in the film industry. That's my little part. That's going to be my legacy. I'm going to leave this behind for others to carry on. And I think I have had an effect, because when I started doing this, Daniel, there was no Latino actors out there doing personal appearances and signing autographs. That just wasn't happening. And now everybody's doing it. I'm not taking credit for it. I'm just saying that somebody had to break down the door and say, you know what, we need to be represented here as well.
You are so right. The only autograph I ever got as a kid from someone who was a celebrity Latino was Jim Plunkett. And Jim you can't even
Do
tell
you
he
still
signed
have that
it.
autograph?
Yeah, I've got it. And
Do you
you're
still
right.
have it?
Huh?
Do you still have it?
I do. Of course, yes.
How much do you want for it?
No.
No?
Rudy, so we've talked about the art and the artistry and the artists and all the things, the stars that had to come into place to make these films, and the impacts have been everlasting, et cetera. However, I'm going to steal this from the educated Danny Otto. I'm stealing his words. He mentioned, Rudy, that you are, through your show and through your work and your ambassadorship, you're the link between filmmakers and film lovers, and particularly for, I think, in my case, for Latinos, there's only one Rudy Ruiz, and I'm so glad to be in the room with you. Rudy, tell us, why do these films mean so much? Why am I in the theater with my parents crying, trying to be macho with the gang, but it's like, holy shit, that's our people, anyways, Rudy, please jump in.
Yeah, I don't know. Thanks for all that. It's kind of hard for me to articulate, to be honest. I mean, I was just lucky to get to watch all kinds of movies when I was a kid, and my parents were very much into making sure that my brothers and I were well versed in our culture as much as possible. Sadly, when I was younger, I took that for granted, and there's a lot that I didn't really hold on to, but what I did hold on to was just kind of the film aspects of things. And yeah, I mean, I can't even completely explain why it hit so hard and completely why it's important, but I think there's just, I mean, they said so many good things already about, the impact and just how it kind of represents all of us as a people. And I just want to share that with more. That's part of with more individuals. That's why I kind of started this whole podcast. And I talk about everything, like all kinds of films, all genres. But the main goal was to kind of get in and talk to these guys and other, Latino directors and filmmakers. And it got me more invested in digging into the history of film and just sharing it with people, because it's kind of hard. I know there's a lot of fans here, and obviously American Me has a gigantic following. Blood and Blood Out has a gigantic following, but there's still more than just the gangster movies, right? There's so much more to see and tap into, and I always feel bummed out because besides my family, I don't really have anyone I can talk about these movies with. So I was like, let me try and share this with people, bring people on, talk about it. And I just had a feeling that there's definitely a hunger for it. And I was right. Whenever I look at the numbers, it's like American Me was one of the first episodes I did before I had Danny on the show. And Daniel, I did one with a friend, and that had the highest numbers. I did one on Born in East LA that had the highest numbers. And it's like, okay, so clearly, there is an audience for this. And I just got to keep kind of roping people in and, trying to talk to all the people that are behind it and hear the stories. It never ceases to amaze me. I feel like I can listen to you guys talk all day long. Yeah.
Well, one day we won't be here anymore to talk all day long. So why not just get as much out of people as you can while they're still here?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been, very impactful and I know positive for me. There was something you guys talked about earlier in this recording so far that reminded me of when we first recorded together. I remember asking you about kind of the representation, because that's kind of a hot topic right now, representation, and why are we not really working towards getting more into films and getting these stories told, especially when right now it seems like the iron's hot. And you kind of blew my mind. I didn't even think about this way when you said you're doing this show Nobody, like, you just decided to do it. You created it. You're in charge of it. No one's telling you what to do. And I was just, and you know how we all just kind of go on and do our part and just make it happen and make decisions and take action. And, you know, that was really inspiring. And
I thought it was very empowering.
Yeah.
You having that show, you've empowered yourself. You're not waiting for somebody to do it for you. You just did it, and now your equipment and everything has gone up in terms of the quality of it, the level of it. It's beautiful to see how you've just progressed.
And it's so great because it's a great show. Period. Right. But then it's got Rudy Ruiz. You know, it's a Latino at the helm. Like, it's just more evidence of how good we are. You willed this to life, you bring into life, and
that's
we wouldn't be
power.
here, right, if it wasn't for you.
That's right. That's the power.
You know, Daniel, I think what's important that what Rudy's doing too is using it as a platform to educate the audience, because there's a lot of politics in Hollywood. You know, there's show business, right? There's the show, and then there's the business. And the truth is, you know, questions like you asked in the beginning, is this the beginning of a lot of these types of films? Or when you first saw them, are there going to be more? And then you found there was a vacuum. There weren't a lot. And a lot of that has to do with numbers at the box office, educating an audience that if you want to see these types of films, you have to support them. You know, but what's interesting, and we've said this numerous times between the three of us, that our community is the largest supporter of entertainment in this industry. We buy more tickets, buy more popcorn, concession items. We do more concerts. We support this industry, but yet there's not an equal balance of the types of shows or stories told. So why is that? You know, that's always been a question. If they know we support the industry, then why aren't they telling more of our stories? And part of that is understanding that, hey, we'll go see movies. I mean, when you think of, you know, I have 5 films that I want to see. Maybe Stand and Deliver or American Me. Okay, it's in my top 5, but I'm going to go see, you know, The Godfather or something. You know what I mean? Whatever. And then I'll get around to the second or third week to go see American Me. Well, the unfortunate situation is that we may not be around if we don't do well in those first 2 weeks,
gotta hit
right?
the first week.
Yeah, and that's how it works. I mean, because there's so much product put out there that if an American Me doesn't do well, then the exhibitors take it out. And what's next? There's always other films. So
or you gotta find an alternative way of getting it out.
So it's educating an audience too. Yeah, we want to see more of these films. We love these films. But if you know, there's so many great stories, right? There's no shortage of any great stories in any community. There's just not enough of them. So it's what Daniel does, I think, is also educate, not only talk about the artistic side to the films, but also the need, the importance of our community to get the word out and get out there and support, you know, these types of movies.
And when Daniel was talking about the numbers, right, that he noticed of the audience, you know, that watches, and he realizes, wow, people are hungry for this kind of content. The same thing is true with the merch. Would it even be possible for me to be supplying merch in 30 years after the movie has left movie theaters if it wasn't for the fact that people were hungry for it and so supportive of it? It would not even be possible. I couldn't even do this if it wasn't for the people and their love and their support. It's like oldies. Who kept that music alive 60 years on? These black artists that didn't get any royalties, whose names are not known to anybody on the planet except for who? Our community.
But you know, I want to ask Rudy what some films or some artists that he thinks his audience should pay attention to. But before that, you just said, you know, how vast these effects are.
Confusing. I'm confused.
I forgot my fucking question, to be honest. What he's saying.
No, but what Rudy does is really important, and he's a big part of this also, you know, and other content creators like him.
And Rudy Daniel, he has his own point of view too, because we love movies. He loves movies, and that is the thing, you know. When you love something, it's not a job, you know.
That's what I was gonna say. You know what's so interesting about these films? All 3 of these films. Your fans aren't just the folks who saw the film originally. like there's kids today who see these films and love.
American Me just got off a 6 or 7 month run on Netflix. So there are all these 14, 15, 16, 17 year olds that never even heard of American Me.
We got a whole new generation
who watch it and love it because they don't make films in exactly that same style anymore. So, you know, it's something unusual, something different, and they embrace it, and it just, you know, gives them even more energy to keep moving forward. But I do want to say one thing. A lot of parents use these films as tools to show their younger children about the choices they make in life. And I want to thank all of those parents who do that, because I believe that that's really the reason Eddie made this film. Yeah. He wanted to bring the cancer out into the light. He didn't want to sweep it under the rug and keep it in darkness anymore. He doesn't have the answers, but surely it needs to be put out into the light, so we're not going to be in denial about it anymore. We're going to look at it and we're going to face it and look that demon in the eye.
Well, that was the thing after Stand and Deliver, Danny Otto, that that was such a positive film. And then when I read American Me, I was like, oh man.
Yeah, going back.
Like, do we really want to make this movie?
I know. The first thing I thought was, God, what am I going to tell my mother?
Yeah. But I would say, I mean, if you think of the characters in Stand and Deliver, like the hero was, you know, was Jaime Escalante. I mean, he was from Bolivia. You know, he's Boliviano. It didn't necessarily matter, and then of course the classes were young Chicanos, really, and Chicanas. I think it had been, you know, because one of the things Eddie had always, a big part of what he did is he was already going into juvenile institutions. We were visiting and talking to kids, and you go into these places and you discover that 90-80% of the population is made of our community, African American, poor whites. So I think for the longest time it had been on his mind about how do we address this? How do we get, you know, to stop this this influx of our community, our young people, into these facilities. So yeah, even though Stand and Deliver, and what it did for Eddie, obviously it propelled him so that now he was quote unquote an A-list actor. Yeah, it did. So that he could do these projects that he had been thinking about, like American Me. So I think seriously it was his attempt to try to address the issue that he was seeing and that we all have seen, that our jails are filled up with people. You know, it's funny, you asked this question to you know, young people. How many of you have had older brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, uncles that have been in the joint before you? 99.9% of the hands are raised.
We did that at the prison, remember?
Right. And then you ask, okay, how many have younger brothers and sisters and people? Everybody raises their hands. And then the third question is, okay, how many would want your loved ones that are younger than you to follow into your footsteps and be here? Raise your hand. Never in all the places that we've been to has anybody raised their hand. So we can rationalize, we can understand it, but yet generational, you know, levels were in front of us. If you know this, but somehow you're following your footsteps of your role model, right?
But there's also the, you know, nefarious other end where when we were doing the research for American Me, we realized that for the same amount of money, you can put a kid through college or put them through the system.
Yeah.
And they're going through the system.
Right.
And what's behind that?
Right. And I think a good guy, Father Greg Boyle, who, you know, really believes strongly, G-Dog, who believes,
we love you, Father
who believes that jobs, not bullets, right? That if you gave
jobs, not jails.
Jobs, not jails.
Nothing
exactly.
stops a bullet like a job.
Like a good job, and also the fact that if you offered a gang kid, you know, a kid that follows a gang life, and you give him a good job, a good chance to advance into a job, not something that's a dead end job, but like all of us want a good career. Would he or she choose that versus the gang life? And without a doubt, it would, according to Father Greg Bowe, which is true, they would choose that path for a successful job.
And that's been proven over
and
he
has
over
proven that
Father,
with his...
Father G is also known for, you know, if you give a kid a tortilla, he will give you a burrito.
Yeah, Homeboy Industries. That's what he's turned this into.
Yeah, we support Homeboy Industries for years. We raise money for them through our personal appearances, and it's it's been a blessing. It really has. People have been very, very generous, haven't they? Sometimes Homeboy makes more money at the end of the day than we do.
Yeah.
I'm like, Daniel, Homeboy really cleaned up today.
And believe it or not, they're trying to do Father Greg's story too. That's been on their books for the longest time.
Yeah.
You know, G-Dog.
That's a great idea. And for folks who don't know, hopefully we all know, everyone in the audience, we're going to check your card if you don't know this. It started off, right, a program where he was helping ex-felons get work, and they started making cookies, and then it was good.
Bakery, yeah.
Bread.
With tortillas.
Tortillas. They started with tortillas too. Yeah.
And then they have Homegirl restaurant, Homegirl industry.
Homegirl Cafe.
Yeah. Which same thing. Been very successful example, model.
Yeah.
Homeboy Industries is global.
It's huge.
They're
It's
everywhere.
huge.
Well, so are you. So are you guys. So American Me, and please, Rudy, jump in if you. American Me. Jump in, Rudy. Wait, when you made it, how could you? You're so young. Did you know it was going to be a seminal film? And then looking back at it now, how do you look at it? Any of you guys?
Well, I thought it was going to be very successful commercially because it had some of the elements, you know, that you see in movies. You had violence, gangs. Again, falling back on the old stereotypes that you see of our community. I thought, okay, we're playing into that, but it's a realistic story. And there was a real story, real characters, and real results that we are very familiar with. So that's what I thought. I thought, and then of course, there were some incidents in the openings in some cities. They were concerned about the violence that could take place, and that created a certain, a negative connotation to the film, affected the box office in some cities. I think when all is said and done, I think it grossed something like 19 million. It was 14. It was made for 25 million. So in terms of Hollywood's look at it, it wasn't a commercial success, right?
And then Eddie couldn't really get like a 3-picture deal after that, cause
and then like in most things, you begin to affect your A-list listing. If you're in a film that doesn't do well, then they look at you a little harder to say, can you do something? The bottom line, are you a success at the box office? I think Jimmy Smits felt that it went through the same thing. Jimmy Smits was a top actor on television, and it wasn't until he did the boxing film Price of Glory, and there's a difference when you have an actor that says Jimmy Smits in Price of Glory versus Jimmy Smits, Price of Glory starring Jimmy Smits. That's a big thing. Edward James Olmos, American Me versus American Me starring Edward James Olmos. That's an A-list effort. And they look at that, and if it doesn't do well commercially, then it affects your status and your ability to make other films. So it's a cruel business. It's about making money at the end of the day.
Yep.
And that's what they look at. So
I never looked at American Me as a money-making film from the beginning. I thought, this may do well because, like you said, it had all the elements. People love the gangster genre, right? But I never saw it as a commercial film. I never really looked at that. I don't know if you guys did, but
I thought it would have an easier time than Stand and Deliver.
So there's a difference between, I guess, a box office smash and then a legacy film, right?
Some films become classics.
You guys made history.
Box office, yeah.
When did you realize that? When did you start to realize that this is the people have spoken and they love you?
Well, for me personally, I had a 15-year-old kid come up to me at a school that said, "I've seen this film 64 times,
right?
And I can give you verbatim every single word from every single character."
Wow.
I said, "Holy cow! I haven't even seen the film myself that many
I
times."
know.
And I thought, you know what? This film speaks to the younger generation specifically. Not only, but a very big part of the audience. It says something to younger people, And so that's where, for me, that's where I thought, whoa, this thing seems to, this story has an impact.
Well, I think it's part of it is also like that immediate connection. Because once I started hearing the "Don't Look at Me," I thought, this is something. Because that's how it gets on the street, like real quick,
Yeah, because you can't control how people react or respond to your work or to these films that you're in. Once they get released, they're out there, and who knows? It's anybody's. It's a roll of the dice how people are going to respond to them, and then for them to have longevity, for them to, withstand the test of time. That's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
I was going to chime in on that aspect of it. Is it does have the longevity, and it's one of those movies you can keep revisiting every 5-10 years, and you're going to pick different layers from it. It's like on all aspects, like character, and if you're into the technical aspects of filmmaking, direction, and all that. Like I have a student who's really into this movie, and sadly, he kind of took it as like, Edward James Olmos, like he just got weak and this and that, and that's why, he got. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, watch it again, man. Like really, like, but that's the thing. It's like that's you and kind of your mindset now. But as you get older, you're gonna realize all the layers and more to it, and it's gonna be more.
Films change as we change.
There's a lot of room for that with that movie.
Yeah, and it just like I mentioned on all aspects.
American Me is so deep. It's so people who've seen it don't even really understand it. And I can always tell because of the questions that they ask. There's certain questions they ask me. I thought, oh Lord, you think you've seen the movie, but you really haven't paid that kind of attention because the answer to your question is right there in the film.
There. Yeah.
If you're going to ask me why I did what I did to my brother, then you really didn't pay attention. And I can understand it was very subtle, showing him the pictures, of the wedding, the people, telling him in his cell, if you don't do it, not only are we going to do it, but we're going to take everybody down. Having to sacrifice one to save many is something many people just did not. It just went over their cabezas.
And it's so great. It's the perfect kind of visual show, don't tell. Like so much of that is conveyed. And you said this earlier, like how you had to show very early on your love for your brother in order for that to have impact.
Absolutely.
And it's not even all just like written in words. It's even in scenes like it's clear in the words when he first comes in and you're introducing him to everybody. But one of the best scenes to me, and it's so simple, sorry, but like directing wise and acting wise, where everybody is on, is when you guys are in that storage room having the conversation where Edward James Olmos is telling you like, hey, I need you to take care of this dude for me. And when you say like, oh, I'll take care of it. If you guys watching like ever look at the actors in the background. Yeah. And then there's that moment when William Forsythe is like, he's not talking to you. Yeah. And then if you watch Danny in the background, even though the focus is on Eddie, you see the eye lines where he kind of leans back. You look at your brother. Carrie is over on the other end, like Mad Dog. And it's like, there's all this stuff happening behind.
The politics.
Yeah, like behind it, where everybody's on and eye lines.
Yeah. I was in the back and he already killed the other dude.
And for me, as his older brother, it's getting out of my control. I have no control over this now.
We don't have any
He's
control.
in too deep now. I can't affect change.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for this guy. I told him they asked you, are you gonna be responsible for him? And
Yeah.
That's a good scene.
Yeah, well, I just love that you can look at any character and everybody is in the moment. It's not like the camera's focused on Eddie or focused on Daniel. Everyone is still acting in the background with their eyes, with their expressions. It all tells the story.
My favorite scene is when he picks me up from prison. When the door opens and Puppet pops out of that little doorway, and you see him see his brother. And then we see the brother. We see what he sees.
He already knows.
And he already knows what he's gonna do, and he embraces him. Yeah. It's like I knew it was you, Fredo.
Yeah.
I knew it was you.
Yeah. You know where you're going.
That just.
And I have no clue.
Maybe people don't pick up on that like I do, but every time I see it, I just get chills.
And Eddie said, Eddie says in the narration with this movie, with our acting, with the gangsters, it's just the look. You don't have to say anything.
That's what
you get that look. That's it.
JD gives that look to Mundo.
Little side glance.
Just that little look. It's on.
That reminds me, Boulevard Nights. I told you I saw the film in Portersville in the theater, and it was blasted. I remember going from after the film was over. Me and my cousin, we ran to the bathroom, take a piss, and then this guy walks in. And he looks like Big Happy. He wasn't, but he looks like him. And we got so scared because Big Happy was scary. And you guys in American Me, You got the looks, the nuance. There's so much going on. I also remember when I saw American Me with my parents. We were walking out, and they were shell shocked. I think it was the only time I ever treated them to a film too. I was just starting to work. I was
going to ask you what their reaction was. I was like, "Oh my God, you took your parents to American Me? What were you thinking?"
Yeah. What is wrong with you?
Parents grew up with they were born in LA, and then they grew up and they met in Santa Clara County. They started with nothing, and anyways, they met. They knew Cesar. They fought for civil rights, etc. Right? They were so proud of being Mexican American, Mexican, and okay. So when they saw the film, I bought the I bought the tickets, and we're leaving, and I'm like, "What do you think? What do you think?" And they were so silent. It would take them a few days to articulate what they felt. Amazing film. Gosh. But wow, do we have to tell Americans about this? Do we have to share this story with these people?
Air our dirty laundry.
This is the best of us, right? But I also remember when I was talking about being a gang reporter, I wasn't messing around. And I would sit in rooms with San Francisco Chronicle, the Oakland Tribune, and other newspapers, and I would say, here's why. They say, why? Why do you want to cover street gangs? And I say, because my name is Vasquez. Look at me. I come from Santa Clara County, and my extended family is huge. And half of my cousins my age ended up on the who's who of high schools, and they went to great colleges and went to the military. Half my cousins. My other half, we all played together, same ages, but they all grew. The other half became the who's who of street gangs. They were vice presidents and founders. One of them made it to Nuestra Familia. I mean, it was like, right? And so when I say to you, I want to cover street gangs, it's because I want to know what happened to my family. I want to know these kids played together, they loved together, and they're all just as smart. So don't tell me one ended up because of circumstance or because there's something happening. So when American Me came out, I remember thinking, I want to take my parents, I'm going to pay for this. It's a big moment. I was working for the Trib, and I wondered, will this be authentic though? Really, really will. I didn't know anything about the film. Didn't know who was in it. I didn't know anything about Hollywood. But I knew about street gangs. I knew about prison gangs. I knew about that history. And so I went in wondering, how good can this be? I came out shell-shocked on the different thing, like, holy shit, you can't, okay, mic drop. You can't cover this fucking subject again for 10 years. This is The Godfather. This is Jaws. This is, and so anyways, I remember that. And the last thing I want to say, I'd love to hear your responses, Rudy and the rest of you. There's been a lot of movies and TV shows about prisons, about gangs, about criminals, but they don't become legacy. They don't make a difference in people's lives. They don't have someone walk up to you and say, I've seen it 64 times. I know every character and every line. You did something with spit and polish and, with the circumstance against you. What is it about, again, today when you look at the film, what's your favorite parts of it?
Okay.
Overall, for me, I just love how the movie just keeps it real. And there's a certain level of authenticity to it that I think people really embrace.
I agree. I think what I hear consistently is how authentic. Mm-hmm. I mean, not to, place one against the other, like Bound by Honor, against American Me, because you get that, and people like, ours or they like theirs, so to speak. But I think the one thing that I hear consistently is that the authenticity between the two, let me just say for our work on the film, the authenticity is what remains constant in people's opinions, I think, of the film.
And not only that, because Danny, Otto, and I had worked on Stand and Deliver, but American Me, Eddie made it a point to have Chicanos work on it. So it was the first movie I worked on where almost everybody there.
The costume department, the editing department, the grips, the electricians, the makeup artists, everybody was Chicano. He had a big piece of pie that Universal gave him, and he cut off a slice for everybody. But these people were qualified.
And not only that,
they were qualified.
Not only that, it has to be said, we party like a mofo.
Yeah.
I think we would party till like 5 a.m. and then go to work.
But you know how it began? With a prayer. The production began with a prayer. Edward James almost gathered everybody on the set, remember? The first day of shooting. And we all just prayed. We prayed for the universe to guide us, on this journey we were going to go on. Remember that?
Yeah.
We were going to go on together, and it was very solemn and very serious.
And the other thing, Daniel, that was interesting is that we couldn't have done that film without the cooperation of the inmates.
Oh,
Yes.
totally.
Because they, same thing, hey, how many of you have had the same statement? We don't want any of our young people to follow in their footsteps. And I remember Eddie saying,
That's
then
right.
help us make this film. You guys have a chance to change your generations. Help us make this film.
It isn't going to happen overnight.
Right.
Maybe it takes 25 years, but it'll
Right.
still happen.
I believe we had about 300 inmates.
Yeah, we're trustees, quote
Yeah.
unquote, that we
Yeah.
could work with. Yeah.
Yeah, we walked the yard with all these
Yeah.
killers.
And the guards, you could tell that sometimes they couldn't, which I guess is to the credit of us, and our look and our attitude.
tell.
And
The
they
guards
couldn't
in the
tell.
towers couldn't
They couldn't
tell who's an
distinguish.
actor.
Wait, who's the
Yeah.
actor? And I had one. I remember one guy say, "Hey man, I like your tack work, man. Where'd you get it done?" Oh yeah, I didn't tell him like it was done in
Makeup.
makeup and
No,
dusted with baby powder, to make it look old.
But I
said, yeah, down in East LA, man.
I know we're going to wrap this up right now, but I just wanted to say that we had to sign a paper. I remember this. And the paper stated that
Oh, yeah.
if any of us got taken hostage by anybody in there, that they would not negotiate for us.
No
and we had to
negotiation.
acknowledge that and sign it. And that's when I thought, oh my God, from the drama department at Sierra High School in Whittier to the yard in Folsom Prison, how the bleep did you get here?
Yeah.
That's why I could say that, I did time at Folsom Prison.
You say it. I never say that.
3 weeks,
Yeah, you did 3 weeks in Folsom
But
Prison.
that's it, Danny. The authenticity all the way down the line, from the inmates accepting us and
Yeah.
accepting the story,
Yes.
to the actors, to the crew, to everybody.
Yeah.
It was definitely
And
heartfelt.
the power that you couldn't match from that place.
Oh.
Like Folsom Prison.
Being there, what it
And-
does to you, how it makes you feel being there.
and the power that you could draw from the inmates.
Yes.
It was amazing.
They wanted us to succeed. I
Yeah.
think. They wanted us
They
to
did.
tell a
Their
good
spirit
story.
was with
yeah,
us.
yeah. But anyway, sorry. Maybe you should wrap it up.
Yeah, we got to wrap it up.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Can I just say
enough
thank
of you, Daniel.
Can we on behalf of all of us thank you, Rudy?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rudy.
You brought all the Daniels together. And we really have
You're
a lot of
honorary-
love for
honorary
you, and we
Daniel.
support you and love what you do.
Oh, in our drinks.
Yeah.
Our drinks,
I'd love
which I
mine.
finished, but yeah,
Thank you for
hey,
the drinks.
thank you.
Everybody
and
had
thank you,
a drink.
Daniel.
And thank you, Daniel.
Salud, salud.
Salud.
you.
On the other side of the digital wall.
Domain. Yes, divide.
Take it out, Rudy. Take it out.
Yeah, so that's that. I mean, if I can say one thing right now is, again, thank you guys, and I appreciate you all being here. Thank you, Daniel Vasquez, for coming out. And if you've never seen this movie before and you happen to be watching this, or it's been a minute, make sure you revisit it. Again, there's so many aspects in it. I think for everybody, every time you see it again, you can take something new from it. Pay attention to Sal Lopez, the father character.
Oh,
pay
yeah.
attention to,
Yeah.
the
Oh,
mother.
yeah.
Pay attention to different people and everything. And yeah, I think there's a lot of layers to it. And yeah, thank you guys again. Appreciate it. And that's a wrap.
We're out.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for listening to the Drinks in a Movie podcast. You can now find us on Instagram at Drinks in a Movie Pod, where we'll be posting photos from all the various films that we discuss. You can also email us at drinksinamoviepod@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and thank you for listening.